boys and girls. Today I have an amazing magical story to tell you. Are you ready? Good. This story starts out in a timeless void of nothingness, complete nothingness, except there is a being who exists in some way we can't possibly imagine or understand, living in that void of timeless nothingness. This is a very special being who is not one being, but three beings that are also one, again, in some way we can't possibly imagine or understand. These three beings who are also one were absolute perfection. They were whole and complete in every way imaginable, lacking absolutely nothing. They were all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-loving. All goodness existed in them infinitely. So they needed nothing and existed in perfect communion with each other, each of the three being equal in every way, because they were also one. But once upon a lack of time, this being who had always existed, even though the term always doesn't really mean anything in this case, because remember, that being exists timelessly, that being knowing everything knew that there were things the being was going to do, and exactly when, despite the lack of time. Perhaps the being even had to do these things, because if the being knew what the being was going to do, the being really didn't have any choice in the matter, right? So suddenly, even though that word has no meaning in a timeless void of nothingness, suddenly that being decided, even though technically decisions require an already existing fabric of time, that being decided to create something that the being always knew it was going to create, being all-knowing. Even though always knowing something is also meaningless in a timeless void of nothingness. No one really knows if the being had any real choice in what the being was going to create or how, because the what and how had always existed in the being's all-knowing mind. Everything existed there. In fact, everything the being created or allowed to come about existed forever prior in the timeless being's all-knowing mind. Every little detail of everything that would ever be always existed the way it would eventually come to be. And since the being always knew that's the way it was going to be, there was no way for it to be any other. It was precisely at that lack of a moment that the being decided to create our universe. Of course, we can't make sense of that because for us, decisions can only be made in time. And because when you're all-knowing, there's really nothing to decide. You've known how everything was going to play out long before any decision could possibly have been made, even though there's no such thing as long before in a timeless void of nothingness. Then, magically, the being created space and time, even though creating anything already requires time. That's the magical or metaphysically impossible part. Suddenly, the universe appeared in just a matter of days, or time periods, or 13.8 billion years. It's not entirely clear. But if it was created in a very short time, the being also instantaneously created people. First, the being created a man from the dust of the earth. The being named him Pigpen. Then the being took a rib from that man and somehow fashioned it into a woman and called her Babyback. The being also made a beautiful garden for Pigpen and Babyback and placed two trees there, one which would give the people created the knowledge of good and evil, while the other would give them eternal life. Then the being told the couple not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. But the being chose to create Pigpen and Babyback the way the being created them, specifically because the being always knew that this particular couple would make the wrong choice, bringing death and suffering into the world. The being even created another being to tell Pigpen and Babyback to do the thing that the being told them not to do. So desperate was the being for Pigpen and Babyback to make the wrong choice. You see, Pigpen and Babyback were created knowing nothing of making choices or of the consequences that would follow. There were many other couples the being could have created who would have listened to the being and not eaten from the wrong tree. But the being always knew that's the way things would happen, and the being clearly wanted things to go the way they went. That's part of being all-powerful and all-knowing. Still, the being pretended to be surprised and upset that Pigpen and Babyback did the exact thing the being created Pigpen and Babyback to do, but told them not to. And with that, he cursed Pigpen and Babyback, but not just them. The being cursed their children and their children's children for all time with something called original sin. Accept no imitations. The being told Pigpen and Babyback that they would have to leave the garden immediately. No 30-day notice or anything. The being also told them that he could no longer stand to be around them since they did the thing the being created them to do but told them not to. The being also flipped some kind of magical switch so that everything now would eventually die. Then the being disappeared forever, or so people thought. Instead, the being secretly watched over everything everyone was doing, even though the being already knew everything that was ever going to happen. Periodically, the being revealed itself to one of the children of Pigpen and Babyback. The being told one old man to kill his son. The being told another to build a boat and then drowned everyone not in the boat. But eventually the being did what the being knew it was always going to do, and it chose one group to be its very own people. These people would get the being's special guidance and protection, which is how the being's people ended up enslaved for 400 years. But that's a story for next time. Until then, I'm me. Thanks for watching.